where I have to just massively take an axe because culture runs amok. There's a bad leader, they lower those standards, and then you got 8s with 6s, and then the 8s start acting like 6s too. But then when you get all the bad ones out, then all of a sudden these 8s rise to the occasion, and they're like, we just only want to play with A players, because A players will self-manage, but everyone has to be an A player. Otherwise, they'll say, oh, that's accepted, and either they'll lower the bar or they'll leave. And one of the difficulties of this is that your definition of an A player will change as you get better. What I thought was an A player when I was in, when I owned a gym, was somebody who was making $50,000 a year. And I was like, this is the shit. This guy is the man. This is A player. And then I had my first $75,000 a year employee, then my first $100,000 a year, and then first 200, and my first 400, then my first million, then first multi-million. And at each level, I'm like, I didn't even know they made people like this, right? And so your definition of what good looks like will always be better. And this is a quote from Sharon. He said, the best talent is always in the future. And so we always want to make room. We want to build a business that has a vision that's big enough that their big dreams can also fit inside of it. And I'll just say on a tactical level, this has now just almost become my razor. I have yet to find an A player that I don't immediately know is an A player within the first 14 days. It just hasn't happened. And so I think what's really happening for me now is that like my tolerance for not A players has just gone down. I can just say like, I'm sure they're okay, and I'm sure we could give them time, and I'm sure they could become a 7, and so what? They're not going to be an A. Why bother? And that is a hard culture to enforce because people don't want to let other people go. Hey, this person just changed their jobs, etc. And some people might say, oh, you're not giving them a chance. I want to be clear here. It depends on the level of who you're hiring. If you're hiring very low wage employees and the training is really fast, that can be different than maybe somebody who has to ramp up. There are elements of this, but you can still see leading indicators in terms of character and work ethic almost immediately. And those are the reasons that most people get fired, not because of kind of the day-to-day skill stuff, which leads us to the next one, which is money attracts talent. Culture keeps talent. And so hear me out. You need to be able to pay enough that A players will ride the ride, right? You must be this tall to ride this ride. But whether they'll want to keep riding the ride will depend on how good the ride is, right? And so financial incentives are absolutely important for attracting them, but in my opinion, not very important at all for getting the most out of them. The non-financial incentives will become significantly stronger than the financial ones because the financial ones are too infrequent. So if we think about how behavior works, behavior is reinforced in the moment. Latency beats intensity every day and twice on Sunday. The reason that one drug is more addictive than another is purely based on how quickly you feel good after you take it. That is how addiction works. Why are inhalants so addictive? Because it's immediately in your bloodstream. Why is Facebook or these social media things so addictive? Because the red light happens immediately. It's not because a red light is inherently this crazy thing. And to the same degree, nicotine is not a super strong drug, but it's immediate. That's why it's so addictive. And so if we think about addiction as a way of changing behavior, then we think, how can I get someone addicted to the right behaviors in my business? And the way that addiction would happen is you have to have reinforcers within the way the business works that happen in real time. And are any of those financial? No. And so we have to be this high to ride this ride. You have to pay well enough that A-level people are there, but you still might not get true A-level performance unless you have an A culture. And so when you have a team of A's, they will self-manage and they will continue to reinforce each other for being A's. And if you've ever been on a winning team, it's more fun than being paid well and on a losing team. If you have to ask somebody when they're in the Super Bowl, how much do you have to pay to try hard to win this game? They would do it for free because winners want to win more than they want to make money. And that's what makes them winners. Money is what will get them in the door, but winning is what keeps them there. So next little tactical lesson, decentralization wins. So we are big advocates of decentralization. I would say that we've taken this as a Warren Buffett, a feather out of his hat. I believe that people need to stay focused, shared resources, split resources. And so our goal, especially in terms of how we're running the company, is that as fast as possible, we want to allow functions to be self-sustaining and ideally from day one, right? And if not, we need to look at that investment from Holdco, something that has to get paid back as fast as possible so they can become independent. And so this is a little bit more of an operational thing, but the way that I think about this is like kind of like revenue lines. So I do not like centralization. I want independent leaders who own their own P&Ls so that they can stay completely focused on making that thing win. And the times in my career where I have, quote, gotten distracted has actually been, I distracted my own team from winning because I took resources